Hi, this is Ali Arango for gamevisualz. Today in this tutorial, you're going to learn how to set up first-person movement as far as moving your player around, as well as being able to aim your mouse and be able to look where your mouse is looking at. You're going to learn how to set up a fire point that's going to allow your player to shoot out projectiles. You're going to learn how to set up enemies and have the enemies disappear when they're hit with bullets. You're also going to learn how to work with Nav Mesh artificial intelligence that's included inside of Unity. So what the Nav Mesh does is when you get close to, well, not when you get close, you're going to learn how to have the enemies, when you get close enough to them, come after you. What the Nav Mesh does is this enemy that's chasing after me, as I move back, the enemy from the nav mesh, so I'll go so you can see, okay, it went a little around the side of that cube. The enemies will navigate around the objects. So I'll press escape so I can come out of there. Okay, as you go through this tutorial, with me, what I try to do is I try to not only explain what I'm doing, I try to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I hope that you will learn a lot from this tutorial, and I hope that you enjoy it. Okay, here we are in Unity. The first thing we want to do is make a ground. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Game Object. We're going to come down to 3D Object. We're going to select a cube. Once we did that, we can see that we have the cube here. You're going to look to your right where we have our inspector panel, and you're going to look to scale where you see this X1. You're going to select here. You're going to change this to 50. I'll press enter to lock that in. Then I'm going to skip the Y here. I'm going to go to Z and then change this to 50 as well. I just press enter to lock that in. Okay, now we want to bring in a game object that's going to be our player. So we're going to go to our upper left, go to game object. We're going to go down to 3D object. We're then going to select cube. Okay, what we want to do is take this multicolored gizmo here. We can use this to move around. If you look to your upper left, you can see we're selected on the move tool. If you look to the right, there's the rotate tool. There's also the scale tool. So these would be the main tools that we use to manipulate objects here in Unity. I'm going to take the green arrow and lift the cube up. I'm going to bring the cube so it's above the ground. With the cube now being above the ground, and with us knowing that the cube is going to be our player, what we're going to do is go to where we see the name of the cube being cube. We're going to right click, and then we're going to left click on rename. And we're going to name this player. I'm going to left click on the ground. The ground is named cube. It'd be better if it was named ground. So we're going to right click here. We're going to then left click on rename. And we're going to rename this ground. Then press enter to lock that in. Okay, in Unity, to manipulate your view, you tend to use the Alt button a decent amount. If I hold the middle mouse button, I can pan the view. If I hold the Alt key as well as the left mouse button, I can rotate my view. If I hold Alt as well as the right mouse button, I can zoom in and out. I can also roll my mouse as well as roll my mouse the other way to zoom in and out. If I left click on my cube or another object and then I press the F key, I'll zoom into that object. Okay, currently everything in our scene is gray. Let's give some color to the scene. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click. This brings up this menu here. We're going to go to create. We're going to go to material. We're going to left click on material. We're going to name this player M, short for player material. And then once we do that, we can see to the right, we have this section right here that has our main maps. So see this albedo. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click here. I'm going to make this a bluish color. So now what I can do is just left click and drag this this material named player M onto our player. And now our player has a bluish color. So we'll do the same thing for the ground. So I'm going to right click. We have our menu pop up. We're going to go to create, go down to material, and then we'll name this ground. Ground M, short for ground material. We'll do the same thing. We'll go to albedo, click here. I'm going to make this, it's like a darker orangish brownish color. And then what I'm going to do is left click and drag this onto the ground. So now the ground has color. Okay, what we're going to do now is bring in some walls. So we're going to go to game object. Near the top left of the screen, we're going to go to 3D object. And now we're going to select cube. We have a cube come in. We're going to just move this to the side. Move that down some. Now we're going to go to this scale tool to the upper left. And what we're going to do is just make the wall wider. I'll zoom back some. Just roll my mouse wheel. We'll make this wall taller. I'll go to the upper left to the move tool. Move this over to the left. Use the manipulator to push this back some. I'm going to hold the Alt button as well as the left mouse button to rotate the view. Just push that down some. I'm going to go back to the upper left and make the wall bigger. Just going to the center cube there and dragging to the side. I'm going to the upper left. I'm going to the move tool. I'm going to hold control, press D, and that should have, is that control D? Yeah, okay, so now I have this wall duplicated. I'm just rolling the mouse wheel back. So I'm going to click here. Go to the left, I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to select rename. I'm going to name this wall 1. I'll click this wall, right click on the name, select rename. I'll name this wall 2. Okay, let's make a material for the walls, I should say. I'm going to right click, go to create, come down to material. We're going to name this wall M. Since we did that, we have this albedo to the right. We're going to left click here. Make this more of a gray color. So now that I have that material, I'm just going to left click and drag this up. I can drag this onto both of the walls as I just did. Okay, what we want to do now is bring in a camera. So we're going to go to game object. And then we're going to go to camera. So we now have a new camera. So looks like the camera came in the right position. I'm going to hold Alt, hold the left mouse button to rotate. Yeah, the camera looks good. Just to make sure, I'm going to click on my player. I'm going to look to the right. So here is the position of the player. I'm going to click on the camera. Yeah, it looks right. So what I'm going to do is move the camera up. And when you look here, see this blue right here? You can see in the game window. This is our camera looking over the edge of our player. So I'm moving the camera up enough so that it can see past the top of our player. Okay, we want our camera to, wherever our player moves, we want the camera to move with the player. So we're going to do this by parenting the camera to the player. And we do this by going to the left-hand side of the screen, or left side of the screen. We're going to left click on camera, drag this, and put this. So it looks like it's actually going on top of the player. And then you can see now the camera is underneath the player, kind of indented in. And basically now the camera is parented to the player. Okay, now we need to make two scripts. And one script is going to control the player's movement. The other script is going to control how the player looks around. So to make the scripts, we're going to right click and we have our menu here. We're going to go to create and then we're going to go to C# script. We're going to name this first one capital P. You want to have this be capitalized because this name you're going to put in here is going to be a class as well. So you want your classes to be capitalized. So I'm going to name this player move. I'm going to right click, go to create again, go to C# script. And this time I'm going to name this capital P for player and then look. Then press enter to lock that in. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to double click on our player move script. When we do this, Visual Studio opens up. If when you click on your script, you don't go right to the script, you can go back to Unity and then just double click on the script again. And then now you can see here's the script opened up in Visual Studio. Okay, what you're looking at is the player move script. For scripts to work in Unity, they have to be attached to an object. This script is going to be attached to our player right here. Basically, this code right here connects this script to Unity. What this is here, as well as this here, is these are functions. Functions are also called methods. When you put something in this start function, pretty much when you need something to start up at the beginning of your game, you would put it in this start function here. If you need something to update every frame, you would put what you need to update here. Okay, this code is relatively simple code, and I'm not sure if my cursor is showing up using OBS Studio to record this. So I'll try to describe, where I'm at if I need to, rather than saying here. I'll try to remember to do that. Anyway, what we want to do is we're going to put in very little code is necessary to actually have us move our player. Typically, when you're dealing with moving something in Unity, you're going to use transform. What we're going to do is put in dot and then translate. Visual Studio is very nice because I just put in T and Visual Studio is like, oh, do you want to put in translate? I'm like, yes, as a matter of fact, I would. So I press tab. There's translate. So Visual Studio will help us out. So I'm going to put in parentheses and then I'm going to put in input. And one of the things to remember about writing code is I'm going to put in input.getAccess. Code is written for human beings to understand. When I was first up, there's Visual Studio trying to help us out. So I'm like, yeah, we'll let it help us out. So I'm going to press tab. When I was first learning code, it reminded me of somebody throwing dirt at a board and saying, understand it. I was kind of like, it doesn't make sense. I don't think it's written for human beings. However, if you look at the code, it is written for human beings. It is written for us to understand. So you can kind of look at it and see what is trying to be accomplished by writing this code. Okay, so what we're going to put in is parentheses, quotation, horizontal. And what we're doing with this is we're setting up for our player to be moved. Okay, so the way things are going to work as far as this code that we're working on is what we want the code to be able to do is move our player. We also want the code to be able to work correctly as far as how the player moves on a fast computer or a slow computer. To make code work the same on slow computers as well as fast computers, use something called time delta time. So that's what we're going to put in now. So times time dot delta time. Okay, so this line of code is the main code that we need to make our player move, in a sense. Since we're working with 3D graphics, kind of the way this this piece of code works is everything before the comma is X. After the so here's the comma now that I'm talking about. I'm going to put in. So everything before that comma is X. Everything after the comma is Y. So we don't want our player to move in the Y-axis. We're going to put in 0, and then we're going to put in F for float. We're going to put another comma in, and then everything after this comma is Z. So pretty much what we can do is we can grab this code to here. We'll hold Control, press C to copy. We'll go to right after this comma. Then we'll hold Control and then press V to paste that code in. Okay, when you're working with C# script, you want to finish off a statement with a semicolon. So I'm going to take my arrow key, and I'm just going to put a semicolon here. For this, what we want is this right here is controlling our horizontal movement. We want to control the vertical movement here. So what we're going to do is click here, and we're going to put in vertical instead of horizontal there. Okay, now with this one line of code written, what we're going to do is go to our upper left. We're going to go to File, and then we're just going to select Save. And what we're going to do is go back to Unity. Then here in Unity, what we're going to do is we're going to click Play. And we should, we didn't connect the code, didn't connect the script to the player. So I'm going to click the play button to come out of play. We're going to go to our upper left, and we're going to select our player. Then we're going to go to our move script, left click and drag this over to where we see add component. We'll drop this right underneath add component. Now we'll go back to play. And now we can see that I'm pressing the arrow keys and our player is moving. So just one line of code let us do that. So now I'm just going to go up, then click the play button to come out of that game preview window. Okay, there is an issue, and the issue is that our player moves very slowly. So how can we deal with that? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Visual Script, and we're going to go to right underneath this public class. We'll go beneath this curly bracket, and what we're going to do is we are going to enter in a variable. 4 of the types of variables that you tend to deal with in Unity are integers, floats, strings, as well as bools. What we're going to do is we're going to put in a float variable, and we're going to use this variable to control the speed of our player. So we're going to put in public, and what this public will do is allow this variable to be actually seen inside of Unity. So then we want to tell Unity what type of variable this is. This is a float variable. So we just put in float, and then we're going to give it a name that makes sense, which is this is going to control the speed of our player. So we're going to name this move speed. So capital M, we just put in move speed, and then in Unity we end the statement with a semicolon. Okay, so we just made a variable. Think of a variable as being like a box. So I just told you there's 4 types of variables we tend to deal with: integers, floats, strings, and bools. Integers are whole numbers. Floats are decimal numbers. Strings are characters, think sentences. Bools are deal with true or false. So we have this variable, which is like a box that holds a decimal number that's going to control the speed. What we need to do now is set it up so that this variable is activated when we come in, like this that the speed is set once we first start our game up. So we have this void start function. So what we're going to do is click here, and then in this function, what we're going to do is enter in that variable. So there's Visual Studio trying to help us out. So we'll just press tab to let it help us out, and we're going to press equals 5f, and then we're going to end the statement with a semicolon. Okay, so we made this public float variable, right? We gave it this setting of 5. And now what we want to do is we want to use this variable to our benefit by clicking here. So we're going to enter in the name of that variable, which is move speed. And then we're going to multiply this times the input. And we need to do the same thing here. So we're going to put in move speed times the input. Okay, so with that done, what we're going to do is go to our upper left. We're going to click on File, Save. Now we're going to go back to Unity. And now we see here when I said public, like public lets the variable show up in Unity. Here is the that variable being shown here. Now right now it says 0. Now when I go to click play, you can see this changed to 5. So now when we go to move our player character, you can see that the player character moves a lot faster. Okay, what we want to do is set things up so that we can look wherever our mouse is at. So we're going to go to player look, which is a C# script. We're going to double click, and now we can see the player look script inside of inside of Visual Studio. Okay, we're going to go to this void start. We're going to get rid of this. So I just selected that. Then we're just going to press backspace. What we want to do is set up a bunch of serialized fields and we're going to set things up so that we can control our mouse X input on the X-axis as well as the Y-axis. We're going to set up so we can control our mouse sensitivity as well as set things up so we can work to control our player's body as well as how we move the camera. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to hold shift. Oh, that's not what I want. There you go. So I'm going to use serialized field. And Visual Studio wants to help us out. So I'm going to go ahead and help us out. And enter in private. String and mouse X input, then comma mouse Y input. Then I'll end this off with the semicolon. Okay, so we're going to use another serialized field. And this is going to help us to work with our mouse sensitivity. So private. This time this is going to be a float. And a float, when you see that float, typically that deals with a variable that's a decimal point. So we're going to enter in mouse. Sensitivity. Then when you are working in C#, if you want to end a statement, you end that with a semicolon. We're going to put another serialized field in. And this is going to help us work with the moving our player's body. So we'll put in private. Transform. Then player body. We'll end the statement off with a semicolon. Okay, we're going to put in another serialized field. These serialized fields allow us to see this information inside of Unity. This will allow us to work with moving the camera. So just Visual Studio is a big help in writing code. So we put in camera, semicolon. Let's make these capital. What's going on there? Oh. Sorry. So, I thought that Visual Studio wanted that to be capital. I'm not sure why it's showing those dots under there, but it should be fine for now. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to make a function that starts up when the game starts up. So we'll put in private void awake. We're going to name this function look cursor. So the way functions work is you have to call them to get them to work. So we're going to call a function called look cursor. So now we have to make that actual function that is look cursor. So we're going to type in private void. Use the same typing. Look cursor. And we'll put in curly bracket. Visual Studio, helps us out by putting in the other curly bracket. So now we're going to put in cursor. Visual Studio wants to help us out. That's good. Dot. Lock state. And what this should do is this should lock the our cursor to the center of the screen. So we want to put in cursor lock mode dot locked. And then we're going to end this off with a semicolon. Okay, we're going to make another function. We're going to put this in the update function so that this is called every frame. And this is going to be named camera rotation. And what we're putting in here, we're actually calling this function. So we have to make the function that we're going to call. So we're going to click next to this curly bracket here, press enter. Now we're going to actually make this function. So we're going to name this private void camera rotation. So we're going to put in a curly bracket. So then in here, we're going to put in float. Mouse X equals input dot get access and then what we're going to do is we're calling the mouse input from up top there. So we want to spell this just as this is spelled up top. Visual Steel is trying to help us out. So mouse X input so we're going to do times mouse sensitivity. Then we're going to do this times time dot okay, that's right, time dot delta time, and that delta time is going to keep this code running the same whether it's running on a fast computer or a slow computer. So the next line of code we need is to control. This is working with the x-axis of the mouse. So we need the same code almost. So we're just going to copy that. So I just selected the code. I pressed Control C to copy it. So now I'm just going to paste this code in. And what I'm going to do is change this to Y. And then also here, and this is also going to be changed to Y as well. Oh, I see. Okay, so up here, I don't have this capitalized, so I need to capitalize. These have to be the same. So when I say these, I mean the top line and the mouse Y input near the bottom. Okay, I'm going to press enter. And now we're going to put in camera dot rotate. So I press the tab key, then capital V. We want vector 3 dot left times mouse Y. That's a capital Y. Then we want to end this off with a semicolon. Okay, we're going to press enter. now we're going to put in player, capital B body, just like we have at the top, dot rotate, parenthesis, capital V, vector 3, dot up, times mouse X. And we want to finish off this statement with a semicolon. Okay, what we want to do now is go to the upper left corner and select File, Save. With that done, we can go back to Unity. Okay, so we're going to go to our hierarchy. We're going to left click on our player, and we can see here's our player move script. In Unity, you need to have your scripts attached to an object. So we're going to take this player look and attach this to our player. Okay, with that done, when you look here, you remember we put in those serialized fields? Well, you can see the result of that here. So for this mouse sensitivity, we want to change this to 150. For this mouse X, we want to put in capital M, mouse space X. For this mouse Y, we want to put in capital M, mouse space capital Y. For we see this player body, we want to go to our player, then left click and drag that over to the spot for player body. Then for the camera, we're going to click on the arrow on the left hand side, and we're going to left click on the camera there and drag that over to the camera box here. Okay, with all that done, let's see if this works. So yeah, it looks like we are able to look. So I'm looking from side to side as well as up and down. So this is working correctly, which is excellent. So I'm going to press the escape key. That lets me move my mouse up so I can click that preview button to come out of the game preview.